Hello, and welcome back to the Bring It Out podcast, your go to show for all things career exploration and youth empowerment. We're working to change the dominant career narrative and connect high level industry leaders with the incoming generation of talent. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Nora to the podcast. Nora is an astronomy guide at Red Sea Global in Saudi Arabia, and today we'll be starting a discussion on ecotourism and dark sky conservation. So, thank you so much, Nora, for joining today. And please feel free to introduce yourself.
Well, hello, and thank you for having me, Jaman. I am Nora Almohizai. I am an astronomy guide at Red Sea Destination. We are actually a subsidiary at Red Sea Sports and Entertainment, which is a company under Red Sea Global, where I lead astronomy experiences that connects our guests with the night sky while promoting dark sky conservation and sustainable tourism, Jaman. And through immersive astronomy sessions, we help such visitors to appreciate not only the importance of preserving our natural night sky, but to actually connect with it. So, my background is actually in physics. I studied and graduated from King Saud University with honors, and throughout my career, I've combined science with communication, with education, obviously, and with leadership. Before joining Red Sea, actually, I was the country manager for a British company. It was called Starlight Education Group, where we had these training programs regarding space and STEM. We connected with multiple students through educational programs in collaboration with KAUST, which is King Abdullah University for Science and Technology, and many other entities. So this is me in a nutshell.
All right, thank you so much. And for those of you who are new to the show, I'm Juman, and you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. So let's go ahead and get started. Before modern GPS, we know that the stars were a literal map for travelers in the region. So how do you bring that sense of ancient desert navigation to life during your sessions?
Well, that's a great question. One of my favorite parts, Jaman, of our astronomy sessions is connecting astronomy with local heritage and locals in general. So we often introduce guests to Polaris, which is actually the North Star, and as Arabs named it centuries ago, Al Judai or Al Jadi. So this star is very well known and it's a fixed star in its position. It never rises nor sets, and that's why we rely on it for guidance. So we explain how travelers and Bedouins used it for navigation long time ago, even before GPS exists. We also talk about seasonal stars and constellations, how people use them to identify directions, seasons, and even the best times to travel. Not every day is a good day to travel or to think about it, even. What makes it especially interesting is that many star names used internationally now are actually having Arabic origins, which is a great thing, and this is a point of power that we can rely on, especially that we are delivering Arabian astronomy. It's not just astronomy, but we're bringing that sense of Arabians and how did they view the stars. So this is the interesting part about it, and highlights the significant contribution of Arab astronomers and how did they actually understand the night sky and rely on it. And honestly, I think guests enjoy realizing that the stars were not just these beautiful dots in the sky to look at, but also served as a practical tool that helped people navigate and understand the world around them years ago and until now.
Thank you so much for that. And building off of what you just said, I would love to know how you take incredibly complex astrophysical concepts and translate them into engaging, digestible narratives for someone who has never looked through a telescope before.
Well, that's interesting because how can we actually take such complex information for people who have never looked, as you mentioned, or even thought about the sky or space or even what is a star? Let's start off with that. So, to start with, we actually break it down with something familiar. If I'm explaining how Earth is rotating around its axis, it's kind of hard to imagine it and imagine stars rotating on the other side. So Earth is rotating counterclockwise, which is going from the west to the east. And vice versa, the stars are actually going and rising from the east to the west. So one of the best examples I use is traffic, basically, and cars. So imagine you're driving a car. You're going forward, but everything else, from the street signs, from the building, and even the street, is going backwards. So imagine the car as the movement of Earth, and everything else is the stars rising and setting, vice versa, from the east to the west. So starting with something familiar is a great way to start and to even, let's say, connect an idea with someone. Most guests are not looking for a university lecture. They came to have an experience, something memorable, something they can cherish actually. So for example, instead of starting with technical details about a nebula or what is a binary star system, we begin with stories. I love to begin with stories. I might explain how a star was viewed by different cultures, especially when it comes for our people, which is Arabs. I begin with such story that I might explain how a star was viewed or compare it with astronomical distances. The other point we can rely on in explaining such complex ideas is to have such sense of, let's say, something that they can relate to. Say a joke, for example, how Arabs used to look at stars and use them in their poems. So right now we have social media, we have memes. I try to bring the stars and connect it. How do they get back to each other or reply using a poem and having the stars as an example?
Thank you so much for that. And I've noticed that Red Sea Global as a company places a massive emphasis on dark sky preservation. So I'd love to know, based on your experience as an astronomy guide, how does a protected dark sky environment change the quality of your tours compared to stargazing near a city?
Well, the difference is dramatic, Jaman. I mean, many of our guests come from large cities and are amazed by how many stars they can see in one sitting, in one session. So, in urban environments, light pollution washes out most of the night sky. You're not able to see it, let alone connect to it or even have a moment with stars, as I would mention. So at Red Sea destination, dark sky preservation is part of the design philosophy. It wasn't designed by a coincidence or just when needed. It's actually a whole engineering team that worked on it, and lighting is carefully engineered and directed downwards and not upwards, which minimizes the sky glow and helps preserve the night sky. And this is the core of what we do. If we don't have our, let's say, our map or the content we rely on, how would we have a great session? So the quality here matters, and it starts with preserving such a night sky that we already have. You know, we're not building it, but we are preserving what we have. So to experience this night sky with people, it would be much closer to them, as let alone experiencing it in an urban night sky.
Thank you for that. And I would love to know, based off of your personal experiences, what originally sparked your personal passion for astronomy, and how did you transition that passion into a full-time role as a guide and science communicator?
Well, my interest started when I was in elementary school. It has to start at a young age at some point. So every year we were asked what we wanted to be when we grow up. And my answer honestly changed constantly until one day a classmate, and I until this day remember her name very well, because she mentioned being an astronaut. And I was like, being an astronaut, it's not a doctor, it's not an engineer. amazing careers, amazing fields, but it's all inside of like one planet. Imagine if you can have a real career, a role where you are getting paid to go out of our planet and do a certain job, you know? And this made me wonder, if everything and everyone we know is in one earth, what is there beyond it? Is there really a career dedicated to studying space, to exploring it? The curiosity stayed with me until I later earned my bachelor's degree in physics from King Saud University and took or specialized in a training that I took with the Space Systems Engineering. I took with the Space Generation Advisory Council. It was an amazing course that I took for 5 or 6 months. I learned a lot about it. I would say this is one of the first real steps I took towards getting into the space field as of studying it and specializing in such a field, which is the Space Systems Engineering. And after that, my first professional experience related to space was being a teaching assistant for the CubeSat challenge we had at KAUST, which is King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, where I worked alongside former NASA astronauts and analog astronauts. And saying an analog, it means an astronaut who is simulating a real space mission but on Earth. So, for example, they are in Al Ula or maybe Wadi Ram in Jordan, imagining that they are on Mars. This is what an analog astronaut means. Eventually, I discovered that the astronomy opportunity at Red Sea and joined the astronomy team, which allowed me to combine my passion for science education and also guest engagement or public engagement, if I may say.
Thank you for that. And I'd love to know your experience in the day-to-day operation and maintenance of the high-end optical equipment that you use in Red Sea Global. So how does that kind of look like? Because I know that most people, they see the beautiful stargazing sessions, but they don't know that, optical equipment maintenance that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. So how does that look like?
Well, that's a great question because people think that we come for a certain time to give us a certain session, turn off and on the telescope. But this is not the case, honestly. There's a lot more happening behind the scenes that most people do not even realize. Before every session, Jaman, we inspect the equipment that we're using. We're not just relying on telescopes, but we also use binoculars, which is a great equipment that guests can use. And in every session, as we inspect such equipment, we have to also align and calibrate the telescope. The telescope works as a brain, but it needs someone who can guide it first. So we have to align it using certain stars, whether it's on the west or the east of the night sky, and then it can actually know where it is exactly. So once we point it, it can go to it directly. So aligning the telescope is a must before every session, ensuring the battery is actually charged, and make sure that everything is clean and functioning properly for our guests. We operate several Celestron telescopes, and Celestron is a brand of telescopes, one of the best. So we have an 8-inch, 11-inch, and 14-inch telescope. Now, what does that mean? It means that the tube, how big is it? So is it 8-inch, which is our smallest telescope? Is it 14-inch, which is a very big telescope that we have and bring for certain events? And depending on the event, we either assemble them as a team or individually. We usually go as a team. And environmental conditions are always something we monitor. So we're not just going there and giving the astronomy session. We have to make sure that it's not windy or it's not that humid or even that cloudy. All of these conditions are actually affecting us from giving such quality. So sometimes we don't even give a session because we're not gonna have a guest who's not going to enjoy the minimum quality we can deliver. So monitoring the weather conditions is a must before every session. And for example, on humid nights, we may need to carefully remove moisture from optical surfaces. So we can deliver a session, but we have to make sure that the optical equipment we have are not actually functioning improperly or not functioning properly, actually. So a lot is going on, whether it's looking at the weather conditions, whether it's cleaning and performing maintenance for certain equipment, let alone the most important thing, which is having the guide ready to deliver. So we have our observation schedules that we have to make individually. Each astronomy guide can make their observation schedule that we can actually compare and modify with each other. And what is it exactly? It's the content basically that we're going to deliver. What are the celestial objects that we can view during this night for tonight's session that we can show our guests?
Thank you so much for that. And shifting now to astrotourism, specifically, do you feel like astrotourism is helping younger generations reconnect with a piece of cultural history that modern city life has kind of made them forget?
Well, absolutely. This is one of the main purposes why we do such sessions. You know, it's not just about bringing guests and having fun for a little while. No, it's about the effect that is left with them way long after the sessions. So, astrotourism creates such a connection between science, history, and culture. And many young people have grown up relying on technology for navigation, like the GPS or Google Maps, you name it. So, when we actually tell them how Arabs used to navigate using the night sky, this is a moment to reflect on. You know, they did not have the technology we do have today. So, how did they manage to travel long distances? How did they manage to know the time, the seasons, and all of these important stuff that we rely on until now, using technology, obviously? So, you know, they are often surprised to learn how much knowledge previous generations gained simply by observing the night sky. And when we share stories about traditional navigation, Arabic star names, and historical observations, guests realize that astronomy is not only about distant galaxies and these beautiful photos we get, but it's also part of our culture and heritage. And the most important part here, Jaman, that I would like to emphasize on, when a guest can actually echo what we are delivering in a session, knowing where the North Star is, how can we navigate to it using different stars, this is when we know that we have done our job. When we spark this curiosity, when we have this moment of amazement, of inspiration, this is where it all actually goes down to.
Thank you so much for that. And shifting back here to light pollution and the damaging effects that has on the dark sky, most people think that light pollution just stops us from seeing stars, right? But how does artificial light also affect the local wildlife and marine ecosystems of the Red Sea?
Well, light pollution goes way farther than that, way farther than most people imagine. So, most people think that light pollution only affects our ability to see stars, as you mentioned, but it actually goes much further. Many species depend on natural darkness as part of their life cycle. For example, we have sea turtles, and a lot of them actually at Red Sea destination. So sea turtles hatchlings, they use natural light, especially the light that is reflected from the moon on the sea, to actually find their way to the ocean. So they rely on such natural light. While also migratory birds, they rely on the night sky during their journeys and when they're actually migrating. Imagine if we have other lights that are affecting. How would such animals know their way back home or know their way back to the ocean if we're talking about sea turtles? So excessive artificial lighting can disrupt these behaviors and affect an entire ecosystem. Now we're talking about a bigger picture that most of us maybe won't realize or see. But that's why dark sky preservation is important, not only for astronomy, but also for conservation. And this is one of the things we love to mention for our dear guests when they come to us. You know, it's part of awareness and how to conserve and be a part of conserving such nature. It's all about responsibility at Red Sea Destination, and it's also all about regenerative tourism and taking that into consideration in our activities, especially when it comes to stargazing or astronomy sessions in general. This is how we're helping protect both the night sky and also the wildlife that depends on it.
Thank you so much for that. And as we end off here, for students who love science but don't necessarily want to work in a traditional laboratory or classroom setting, what advice do you personally have about entering the field of ecotourism or experiential education?
Well, that question I think brings us to a message that I want to give to anyone, as you mentioned, especially the Gen Zs entering such a career and such a field. You know, my biggest advice is to follow your curiosity and develop skills beyond technical knowledge. Public speaking, storytelling, communication, let alone hospitality when it comes to guests, and also guest engagement are just as important as scientific expertise. You need to know how to connect with people and make complex ideas accessible. You can have the biggest complex idea ever, but if you don't have the bridge to actually reflect on it and connect people with it, then there's no value in it, or as much value as you can see. It's all about the effect, the legacy that you can reach, or that you can build a bridge to make sure that such information reach a person. And the best way you can make sure of that is when that person is an expert in defining or in explaining such an idea in their own way. And this is how you know you have succeeded. So I encourage students to actively seek opportunities, courses, workshops, volunteer work, internships, networking opportunities that can open unexpected doors. And I always say that the shortest path to someone's heart is telling a story. So the shortest path to someone's mind is information, and that could be obvious. But the shortest path to someone's heart is giving them a story that they can relate to, that they can understand in their own environment, in simple words that can reach them. And learning how to tell stories has been one of the most valuable skills in my career.
Thank
So
you so much.
I'll stop with that.
Yeah.
One more thing, if I can say, you
Yes.
know, being in such age, sometimes you think it's early for you. But sometimes you think it's not the time yet. But always remember and try to tell yourself, if it's not me, then who? And if it's not now, then when? So just
Thank you
keep that
so
in
much.
mind.
Yeah, thank you so much for that piece of advice, especially for me as a high schooler. It's easy to let other people make you think that you're too young, too
Yeah,
inexperienced to do what you want to do. But, it's important to know that the right time is now. So thank you so much for that.
exactly. Well, thank you for having me, Juman. I had a lot of fun. I literally just got out of work, and you know, talking about work again is amazing. But honestly, I'm very proud of you, and you know, what you're doing is actually one of the bridges, one of the things we need as young people entering the career field or pursuing such a career and field. So thank you so much for being that and for doing it as well.
Thank you so much, Nora, and I hope that we can talk again soon.